Good morning and welcome to this week's Grow, where we gather to recharge, organize, and work here as members of MWAG. We are so glad that you're joining us today. And we have our Empower team joining us today, and they are going to talk about untangling political identity, as you can see on the screen. And if you have questions, you can put them in the chat, and I will leave it up to them to answer them as they go. Or you can even use the raise your hand um, little icon, and if you want, if you're brave and you want to come off camera or unmute yourself, you can do that too. I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to Mabry and let her um, introduce this and with the Empower team.
All right. Hello, everyone. So, we are going to be talking about a discussion that we've been having this week, and it is part one in a longer discussion that we're hoping to have with all of the MUG members. And this is about untangling political identity. So, we're looking at how to examine our own ideology and as well as make space for others. So, you've probably noticed we've had some posts asking questions about conservative philosophies and liberal philosophies, and this is where we're starting. So I'm going to walk us through kind of the framing of why this is relevant, and then we're going to take it from there. So, conservative and liberal are what we would call polarities. So, polarities are it's something that has two or more things that seem like they contradict each other, but they actually work together. They work in tension um, to become the best version of themselves. So, how do we not only just like it's not something that's just intention, but it's something that is creating something better. And so conservative and liberal are two of those things. They're on polar sides, but when they're in relationship with each other, they actually benefit each other. It's a symbiotic relationship. So if we want to go to the next slide, polarization is something that we're talking about a lot in our society, right? This is one of the big problems we're concerned about. It's something that's affecting um, us on a larger scale and also on a very personal scale. And polarities are inherent, they exist, but the trick is how we manage them. So I'm borrowing this metaphor from the Horizons Project, where they talk about our current context of polarization as a forge. So we know that when you're working with metal in a forge, you have to have extreme heat and pressure and tension. The temperature rises in order for that metal to become malleable enough to change and construct into something. And this happens a lot. If you look throughout history, especially in our country, we have periods where this polarization, this heat and temperature rises, and then lends way to something else. So the question for us is, what are we going to do with this tension and with this increasing heat? And so if you want to go to the next slide, polarities or the polarization that we're experiencing isn't as much the problem as it's the fragmentation. So this is what we think of when we're talking about toxic polarization. We're letting this heat and this tension get us to the point where we don't want to interact with each other. We no longer want to be in a relationship with each other. We're creating this gap and we're seeing how this is affecting us in real time. And so, what we are hoping to do is look at how we then conduct these polarities, how we can remain in relationship with each other, keep the tension in a way that we can then create something from this heat and energy that is really uncomfortable for us all. If you want to go to the next one. Okay, so it makes sense why we're pushing each other away and why this fragmentation is happening. The social science behind toxic polarization shows how much of these dynamics are fueled by a deep sense of threat to our identities and our way of life. These threats can be perceived or real. And it makes sense that when it's so uncomfortable, when this tension and this pressure is there, we just want to disengage. We want to push away people who think differently than us. We want to only consume news sources that are going to ease that tension rather than create that tension. But like this says, this level of toxic othering can ultimately lead to condoning violence or allowing violence to continue against those we see, even subconsciously, as less than human. And unfortunately, we're seeing that play out in real time right now. So, when we think about how to conduct these polarities, where we're taking this tension, what we're creating from this tension, we are identifying liberal and conservative as a relevant way to talk about this. And These terms, as you guys have probably noticed, have evolved quite a bit. They've changed. They no longer mean the same things they used to 10 years ago. This gets extremely confusing when we're looking at it in terms of the two-party system and our political leaders right now and how they're defining these terms and their actions. And so it gets really confusing for us. And yet we're still using these terms, liberal and conservative, to label each other, to other each other, to pigeonhole each other into these camps. And so we feel that it's relevant to look at the roots of these two terms and think what we can do with this. And Catherine is going to now tell us how we're seeing that play out in Mormon Women for Ethical Government.
So, one of MWEG's core principles is that we are nonpartisan. So, we welcome and encourage our members to have their partisan views of across the part of the spectrum. And we do know that we have a variety of members across that spectrum. Um, we but what's interesting is that members across the spectrum have also expressed that they feel a little bit sometimes they feel like they don't belong within MWEG because of certain views that they have, or maybe they wish MWEG would express a view that was something that they really strongly believe in, or they feel like they just don't necessarily feel 100% represented by what they see within what we do in MWEG. What we think, from what Mabry has mentioned, we feel like what we gain from the tension that as we're working with the differences among our members and individuals, we are gaining strength, we're gaining perspective, we are growing. And this is the kind of thing that you experience in your life all the time when you are interacting with members of your family or with people that you are in a neighborhood with or in a congregation with, that we're all growing and learning from one another. And what are we going to do with those experiences? Are we going to become angry, or are we going to work with them to learn and grow? We also wanted to do this project because we recognize that many people in recent years are also experiencing a big shift in their own partisan identity, that they're reevaluating where they have been, and as events occur and life circumstances change, as we grow and develop, people are reevaluating, is this what I think? What does this mean? Who am I anymore? So we think this is a really valuable experience for all of us to be able to look at the principles of conservative and liberal ideologies and kind of really try to understand them better, understand how they work in our lives and how they might be understood by others. Lisa's going to talk more about what our discussion has been like.
Okay, so as you can imagine, so I wanted to start with this chart here from a Gallup poll. Um, I don't know how well each of you can see this, but it's showing how people within political parties describe their own political views. And it goes back to what, like 1990 maybe on this chart. Um, and you can see back 20, 25 years ago, there was a good share of people who, like if you look at this graph of Democrats here, there was a good share of people who were conservative and identified as Democrats. And also, if you look over on the Republican side, I mean, relatively a good number of people, more than you would consider, who considered themselves liberal and were Republicans. The parties used to be much more mixed. You could have a lot more. It wasn't the ideology wasn't so unified across a political party. You could have a lot of different ways of thinking within one party, and you can see just how uh, they've either like gone up a ton or really crashed down over the last 25 years. So people have started to view liberal and conservative more along the lines of their party. It became synonymous with their party names. But then, even more recently, that has also started to fracture. Um, as we see, and I believe if you wanted to, in the comments, I'm sure you could share examples of traditionally liberal things that Republicans are, or traditionally, like for example, um, big government versus limited government. You can see how that's kind of crossing lines right now. Or there's lots of different examples where you're seeing Democrats do things that might have been traditionally conservative, or Republicans that are doing things that might have been traditionally liberal. So the terms are really skewed, really wonky. And so when we came out to say, we decided that in our discussion group, we were going to each day have um, a day to talk about the benefits of liberalism, the benefits of conservatism, and then the drawbacks of each of those two. But you can imagine that people are a little confused about that as they're talking. Um, and there, you could see some hesitation. You could see in some of the comments people saying, you know, one of the benefits to this is also one of its drawbacks. And so there's some good discussion in there as people are trying to understand from their own perspective what they consider to be what they personally consider to be liberal and conservative, and how that maybe doesn't perfectly define the parties that we're seeing today. So you can, if you haven't participated in these discussions, we would love to hear your thoughts added on. They're entitled Untangle This. You can do a search for it either on MWEC Central or on our private Facebook discussion group for members. And Monday and Wednesday are the 2 days that we discuss the different benefits of these two ideologies. Mondays was the benefits of liberalism. Wednesdays was the benefits of conservatism. And then Tuesday and Thursdays were when we talked about the drawbacks. So you can go through, see what other people thought about what personal experiences they might have had that led them to see these things as drawbacks or as positives. But the one thing that we asked everyone to consider in these conversations is that they remember, keep in the forefront of their mind to have these conversations with compassion, with candor, and with curiosity. So with candor, we want people to feel free to be really open and honest and even vulnerable about the perspective that they have on these ideologies and how it's personally affected them. With curiosity, you know, if when you see something that you don't really agree with, to approach it with a question, ask them what experiences in their life drew them to see things that way. And ultimately with compassion, so that we're remembering that we're all human, we're all in this together, we're all part of one big community here in the country, and that compassion only helps these discussions to continue rather than cutting them off. So really these first 4 days have been about actually kind of gathering data for our big discussion that's going to be happening tomorrow. And so tomorrow we're going to be going back to what Mabry talked about, these polarities. We're going to be examining the polarities that exist within these political ideologies, how they might support each other. And so we really want to get as much engagement in those conversations as possible. And again, especially to be hearing your own personal perspectives on it. Because as Catherine said, a lot of women at MWEG have had an evolving, have had their political identities have been evolving in different and interesting ways, and not always in one direction and not always in a solid line. Usually very, very different, very different ways. So we would love to hear that kind of experience from you. And this is not where the discussion ends. We're going to continue next week on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We're going to have more discussions about ideology, specifically about toxic polarization and partisanship, what that's looking like in our individual lives and in our country, and ultimately what it means to be a principled citizen and how we can help encourage that, grow that within ourselves, and share that with others. So we really hope that you join in those conversations. And if anybody has any questions about kind of the reasoning behind this, how it's going, or anything like that, we'd love to hear from you.
Lisa, will you remind people where they can find the Untangle This questions?
Yes, thank you so much. So if you go to MWAG Central, so that's central.mwag.org, is that the or there's also an app, that's how I always access it. There are a couple different ways you can find it. So you can go to the search and type in untangle this as one word, or even just the word untangle, and those posts should come up. There's also, I'm going to just pull this up here and show you in case you have the app. Okay. Can you see this? You probably can. Oh, you can. Okay. So when you open up the app, if you click here under spaces, it gives you a whole list of all the discussion spaces that we have available. And when you click discussion, you can see all the different tagged topics that we have. And we have one topic here. Let's see. That says untangle this. And if you click that, then you're going to get all the different untangle this conversations that we've been having, including this intro video from our co-executive director, Jen Thomas, that explains a little bit more about the purpose. So that is how you get access it on MWIC Central. And then we can also go to the Facebook discussion group on Facebook if you are a member there. It's a private group, which is also really important because you can't have these kind of discussions in a public space online. People, we need to have it. It's just nice to be in an area with people that you can trust, an area that feels safe and where you can really express yourself. So those are the
So
two places.
in the chat, Brittany is asking, why is this important to do now when it feels like everything is unraveling in scary ways? Why is this important now? Mabry.
Yeah, I can start with that. So if you look back or if you thought back to the quote that I had read from about the alternative to looking at how we bridge these gaps and how we figure out how to conduct this tension, the alternative is violence, and the alternative is more and more fragmentation and a lot more destruction. And it's going to be a lot harder to work together to repair things when we're just letting that fragmentation get farther and farther. And so it does feel like we're slowing down a bit, like we're kind of answering questions that don't really feel as relevant to all the really big things happening right now. But in reality, this is getting to the core. If we can't figure out how to talk to each other and how to see the value in each other's position, then we're not going to be able to move forward at all. And the alternative is what we're seeing right now.
Yeah,
So
and I
as
would just,
part,
oh,
oh
sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna add that I feel like on social media and other media outlets, we're really encouraged to see things as black and white, and we're encouraged to see people as good guys and bad guys. And I think this kind of a discussion right now is especially important in reminding ourselves and each other that we can rise above that, that we are much more complex than that, and that there's within each kind of ideology, there is a foundation that is worthy of examining and understanding.
So going forward, you guys, so as you guys said, this is going to continue and there's going to be more questions and examining and some self-evaluation I think is happening as the questions are really to do like an introspective, like how do I feel about this and how do I behave or how can I behave differently if it's not conducive to peacemaking, right? So are we going to be offering ways for people to practice this or um, some real life examples of how we go about using these skills or just putting them in practice? Or what are some resources that you guys would suggest that MWAG has already provided that we can share with our members that they can go and find?
Yeah, I think you guys should jump in and offer anything else, but we definitely want to make sure that we are first making ourselves able to use these skills. And so that's where this introspection comes in and why we're asking these questions to get kind of to a deeper level and examining our own thoughts and approaches. But then, yes, we want to for sure equip women with the tools and the actual how, the practical, what does this look like to be talking to someone who has views that I see as harmful. How do I encounter that? And so we definitely have resources on the MWEG website and in Central, including the Conflict Resolution for Beginners course that will be open for enrollment in either today or tomorrow or in the coming days. So we hope that you will sign up for that if your schedule allows. There's also a practical peacemaking course online. And then we have some media literacy tools that I think also are really useful in how to navigate this space online.
We also offer our living room conversation program every month where we are in small groups practicing the skills of listening deeply and responding from our own experience without defensiveness or rush to judgment. And those have been transformative for many of our members to have that experience and then go and use that in their lives. And it's the kind of thing that takes many repetitions of practice to be able to get good at. But we hope we're offering a lot of opportunities and continue to offer more.
Yeah, and if you are not familiar with living room conversations, it is a small group conversation. Catherine, maybe what, six-ish people, right?
Yes, the
And
ideal is 4 to 6 people with a trained host who is facilitating and helping bring the best conversation out from every participant.
yeah, and each of those has a very specific topic. So you can see, um, I know that they come up if you look in like the discussions, it'll show those living room conversations. Are they posted in the MWEG events for people to register for as well?
Yes, they're also in MWEG events.
Okay, so if you are in the MWEG Central um, member space, you can go to member events. It's usually on, at least on mine, it's on the left column side. Click on that and you can see if you want to register for one of those. And Catherine usually posts the topic that they'll be discussing for that particular date. Uh, and then also, Camille put in there if anybody has suggestions for books that the MWEG book group could use that might be relevant to this topic of exercising peacemaking skills or nonpartisanship. One thing that I was thinking about is you guys were talking about this polarization and how people identify but how MWEG is nonpartisan. I think that we need to make it clear, like, we're not asking our members to identify as nonpartisan or independent or whatever. You can be what you want to be. It's just that we want to support everybody. And then, so we aren't going to take a position one way or another. But often some people feel like we're too much this and we're too much that. And I think that actually makes what is one of the things that makes MWEG super unique is that the people that think we're too much of one or the other means that we are pretty balanced. And so I think that you'll see that in a lot of the courses that we offer and the information that we are putting forward that we want it to be for everybody. And I think there is something there for everybody. So do you guys have anything else you want to share or any other questions? Okay, well, I want to thank our Empower team for coming and sharing this information. I want to encourage everybody to keep an eye on those discussion spaces. The MWEG member space is really has so many great tools and information. And if you want to continue to know what MWEG's up to or events that we're hosting or just to be part of certain communities, advocacy areas, it's all in that tool. Um, anyway, there's Camille, there's a suggestion in the chat for book group, so keep an eye on that. So if anybody has anything else, we also want to encourage you if you find value in the grows to share these. We usually post a link in MWEG Central, but that is a public YouTube link, and you are welcome to share it. It is not just necessarily for members. So if you have family members that are curious about what MWEG is, this is a great way to share MWEG. You can go through our video library and find things. Go back and watch older videos and share them. If you were at the Share New Bank event, we encourage you to share that one as well. Super great ideas about being in community and how to do that. So we hope that you find value in these, and we are grateful that you joined us today. And thanks to everybody for being here, and we will see you next week. Have a good day.